Welcome to the fifth video of my 50-week painting challenge, where I paint with a different color palette every single week. I put 50 different color combinations inside these balls, and every week I pick one. And this week's color scheme is Green Triadic. A triadic color scheme consists of 3 colors that form a triangle on the color wheel. Green is my dominant color this week, and on the classic color wheel, the other 2 colors are orange and purple. These 3 are the secondary colors. This combination really reminds me of the 1970s, very retro. But of course, that completely depends on how light or dark the colors are and how intense they are. When you use pastel versions, for example, that retro feeling disappears completely. I went through my box of swatches and selected green, orange and purple shades and created a few combinations. With each color you can make so many variations. You can see that most of my swatches are muted colors. That's what I personally love. But if you add more intense versions, you can vary endlessly. First I applied a layer of gesso mixed with a little bit of yellow to the canvas board. This makes the surface much nicer to paint on. The paint doesn't get absorbed as much, the surface becomes smoother and the bright white of the canvas immediately disappears. I let it dry and then I mixed my colors. The first 2 layers mainly serve as a base because I'll be working with a palette knife later on. That's why I'm showing this part sped up, since it will change again anyway. These layers help me decide how to divide the colors. I don't work from a reference photo, I work intuitively. And I've painted many seascapes, but because I don't follow a reference, the first layer is always a bit of a search. You could also paint these first 2 layers in one go, since they will become the base for the palette knife. Green is the dominant color, which means it takes up the largest area. Orange comes next, and purple is used the least. This follows the 60-30-10 principle. Roughly 60% is the dominant color, 30% supporting color, and 10% accent color. But just like with any color scheme, you can take this rule with a grain of salt. It's not a strict rule, more of a guideline. You can use as many colors as you like, as long as they don't all get equal attention. It's usually much stronger when one color takes the lead and the others play a smaller role. I use different shades of each color and sort of block them in. Here I try to suggest a cloudy sky, but since I know I'll be going over it with a palette knife later, it doesn't have to be precise. It's mainly about placing the colors. Once the paint was dry, the fun part started. I really enjoy painting with a palette knife because it creates such a special effect. By holding the large palette knife flat, the surface doesn't get covered evenly and parts of the underlayer remain visible. I love that effect. The palette knife I'm using is from the brand Amsterdam. I also have a similar one from Liquitex, but recently I found a very similar tool in a store, the one on the left in the photo. It looked almost identical to a painting palette knife, but it was in the baking section. It's actually a cake spatula or icing spatula. A large artist palette knife can be quite expensive, but this baking tool was very affordable and honestly, it works just as well. After this layer has dried, I continued with the lower part of the painting. I usually work from dark to light, but since I don't have a fixed image in my mind, I sometimes move back and forth. If something feels too dark, I lighten it, and if it feels too light, I darken it again. That's the advantage of working with acrylic paint. It dries quickly, so you can easily make changes. I continued working on the sky while the lower part was drying and added the highlights there. Once the bottom was dry, I applied the final layer to that area. At the horizon, I mixed a slightly more intense orange that stands out beautifully against the softer colors. I also added a somewhat more intense green here and there in the lower part. The purple on the right side felt a bit too dominant to me, since purple is my third color and I wanted to use it sparingly. I partially covered it with some dark green and this kept that area dark but softened it. In some places I allowed a bit of the purple to show through. And after a few final adjustments, the painting was finished and this is the result. Let me know what you think. If you enjoy this style of painting, I really encourage you to give it a try. It's such a satisfying way to work. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next video with a new color palette.